Welcome, 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 my lovely brothers and sisters. Welcome to part 3 of the inverted consummation of the age. I am reading from Battles Between Shadow and Light, written by Wes Penre. You can see the front cover of this book. All right, I left off with the consummation of the age inverted. In part 2, I have said at the end that I would stop there because that is quite a piece of information, and that I would start with this subtitle of this chapter 9 of this book. All right, the consummation of the age inverted. Before I start, I want to say that we need to realize that we are in actuality living in a archontic world ruled and dominated by archons, or better said, archons. So we need to realize that archons interpret things completely different than we do because they lack spirit. Because we have spirit, we interpret the things from a deeper perspective and understanding than they are able to. So all the narcissism that we are dealing with in the world is in actuality coming from the archons themselves. My spirit told me a few hours ago that in actuality, people whom are for a long time in a narcissistic relationship, they in actuality are more and more pulled into the mindset of the archon that rules that person, with whom the male person or female person has a relationship with. What does my spirit say? The majority of the humans are in actuality sharing their mind with an archontic mindset, which is called in psychological terminology shared fantasy. So let us start to see the things as how they are seeing the things. The more we start to do this, the better we understand why the things are happening that they are happening. I must say, since I'm going through all this information, indeed I get a complete different perception on this whole archontic script that is being rolled out over this earth. This is a script that is being played several times already, and it is a script that they constantly do after 2156 years when a new age comes in related to the zodiac signs. We are in the age of Pisces, and in the age of Aries, which was before this age, the exactly same script was being played out. Yeah, so everything that we are facing today is not new. It is in actuality the manyth time that this script is being played out. We are slowly but surely entering in the age of Aquarius, which in actuality would take place around about the 2100s. But due to a situation, the archons are reducing this with 50 years, and they want to have their script accomplished by 2045. Realize this because this is quite important. All right, the consummation of the age inverted to better understand the archontic singularity and metaverse that the archons are trying their uttermost best to lure at least half of the human soul group into. We first must understand the pleroma, since the kinoma is a shadow of the pleroma. That is why I am using this yin yang symbolism, because my spirit told me to use that picture because it comes close in this whole topic, and also to understand what is in actuality said here. So to better understand the archon's singularity dash metaverse, we first must understand the pleroma, since the kinoma is a shadow world. So we are living in a shadow world, yeah, in togetherness with the archons themselves, that imitates everything happening above. So below. So let us summarize one more time. The first human revisited. At the beginning of this book, we talked about Barbello, the first emanation of the mother goddess in the pleroma, also known as source. This emanation replicated in the pleroma, and soon powers, luminaries, and aeons came into awareness. Luminaries and aeons created stars, star systems, constellations, and galaxies, all generations of offspring from luminaries and aeons. So the first human was an emanation of the first human, of the first emanation, I mean. So the first human was an emanation of the first emanation, comma, Barbello, dash the first human being the self-conceived daughter. The first human came into being when Barbello asked the mother goddess to receive thought, foreknowledge, incorruptibility, life eternal, and truth. This became the first human, who was the only offspring of the mother goddess in the pleroma, the source. And Barbello, dash the only child. And the above five attributes are the traits of the first human. Invisible spirit then anointed the first human with its own goodness until it was perfect. So here we have the ultimate Holy Trinity, the Mother Goddess, the Holy Spirit, then Barbello, the mother, and the first human, the child, or better known as Christ. So the mother goddess gave the child a mind to work with, therefore we think with our minds, dash not the brain or spirit. The higher mind stretches all the way to the uppermost region of the pleroma, where Barbello, our original mother, is. And because of her mind and from having forethought, the child understood everything. From there, the first human created powers and luminaries. The fourth luminary was Lilith, and from her sprung Pistis Sophia as the last born. So still Pistis was a direct emanation of the first human, who created Pistis a few times removed. There are 12 realms in the pleroma, and they all belong to the self-conceived child, dash the first human, comma, since the child was elevated. So this means the first human can move freely everywhere in the pleroma. Out of the will of the self-conceived child came the perfect human. the first revelation, between quotation marks, the truth. She was named Geradamas and was appointed to the first eternal realm by the side of the self-conceived and with the first luminary, Harmozal or Armozal, depending on the gospel. So Geradamas was Seth, the so-called, between quotation marks, son, from whom in distributed form and with the spirit of Pistis created the first Homo sapiens pure bloodline via Zoe/Eve. So the pleroma. In archontic view, this is what the cloud is meaning. Yeah, so if they speak about the cloud in Silicon Valley, yeah, all these people from Silicon Valley, they are speaking about a cloud. This cloud is already being created. We are in actuality already in this cloud. This cloud is already covering this earth. Yeah? This cloud must look like the pleroma. So humanity is in actuality doing the bidding of the archons by terraforming this earth into their version, so into the archontic version of the pleroma. Now we get the understanding why nature needs to taken out, because archons do not understand nature. Yeah, nature is spirited life forms. Archons are no spirited life forms. They lack spirit. They only have what is called mind and what you could call soul. But even that, there you can debate about that one. So all over the earth there is already a cloud created, and this is not the first time I read this, because Sabrina Wallace is also telling us through her sources of information that indeed since 1995 we humans are in actuality already in a cloud and in the cloud. Yeah. So far, the creation of the first human in its three forms is the first human, between brackets, the self-conceived child, thus being androgynous, her offspring, Geradamas, who sits in the first realm of the pleroma, and Geradamas' offspring, between brackets, emanation, Seth, who sits in the second realm. The first human through Geradamas and Seth is in one unit, Sophia's so-called counterpart, whom the Gnostic texts claim Pistis created without. We are the first human, Geradamas and Seth in different pleroma dimensions, and therefore we are also of Pistis Sophia, since human and Pistis join as counterparts through the first human. I realize this might be confusing for many readers because in 3D we create differently from the aeons in the pleroma, and we need to adjust our thinking until we comprehend this new way of perceiving reality. So I would suggest reading the above few paragraphs more than once to grasp it completely. The purpose of recapping all this and adding to it is to better understand the singularity. In the beginning, In the Pleroma, there were only the 12 aeons and their luminaries and powers, as conveyed in the, between quotation marks, the secret book of John, the long version. These replicated, and the emanators named them and gave them traits, exactly as the archons did later, after Pistis had created the Kinoma and Yaldabaoth. A way to visualize is to think of these replicas existing within their respective aeon as, between quotation marks, powerhouses and as light. Thus, stars in the Pleroma and Orion are sentient. They are a combination of luminaries, powers and aeons, lighting up the Pleroma and more recently Orion. When it was time to help Pistis retrieve her light from the Kinoma, the first human, Geradamas, assisted Sophia by sending replicas of herself. Geradamas sent replicas of herself into Orion and manifesting as the Namlu'u, us. Geradamas split into many and we became individuals, yet we still connected individually with both Geradamas as a single being, a, between quotation marks, cloud, so to say, and likewise with Pistis, Sophia in the Pleroma, likewise with Pistis Sophia. So we carry the soul fires of Geradamas and Pistis Sophia in one. In the Pleroma, there is no disconnection between the aeons, save for in the later generations of emanations in whom the light is slightly fainter. This means a certain set of ignorance comes with it. Therefore, the assertion that Pistis created in, between quotation marks, ignorance, she was the last born of the primary aeons and was on a far more distance from the mother goddess herself than the rest was. However, what is important to understand so far is that Geradamas and Pistis split their spirit fire into many individuated units of consciousness. But we as the Namlu'u kept our divine mind. However, being inhabitants of Tiamat in Orion and the Kinoma simultaneously, we lost some of the divine mind's power because of the lower dimension and densities that we are in. Along the line, we also started using a, between quotation marks, lower mind, which is the same mind but with lesser capacity. So this is the famous rock in the water that many psychologists use, with this little top above and the rest is underneath the water. Not until Enki created Homo sapiens at the end of the second Atlantis was Seth, Geradamas' offspring involved, and we fell deeper into ignorance after Enki and his cohorts had decreased the density of this planet, also known as Gaia, which became Earth. The following is crucial to understand all the way from the Pleroma to the depth of the abyss. Beings must emanate lower aspects of themselves to function within certain densities and thus also fall into degrees of ignorance. For instance, in the pleroma, the first human exists in the first realm, the first inner, so to say, ripple, if we visualize source as a sun in the middle. So the first human manifested herself as Geradamas, still in the first realm. Seth, however, who was the offspring, was a little fainter and exists in the Pleroma's second realm. Pistis exists in the fourth realm. So the aeons replicated to create humans. To descend into Orion and eventually deeper and deeper into the Kinoma, they must create new emanations that are fainter and can exist in those densities. Thus we have the Namlu'u in Tiamat, being lower emanations of Geradamas and Pistis in tandem, and when Homo sapiens were created, Geradamas needed to split her offspring, Seth, who can operate in lower densities than Geradamas. Thus, we have the Seth bloodline we know of from the Bible, which is the bloodline human spirit were inserted into, being extensions of Pistis and Seth. As a result, what we call our, between quotation marks, spirit body is the Geradamas / Pistis spirit, manifesting inside whatever body we possess at the moment. So the Homo sapiens body is currently our true spirit body. Before that, Namlu'u was and is our original blueprint body, which we most likely will manifest in Orion as soon as we are back in Orion. When we leave our physical bodies here or in Orion in the future, we are mind and soul, connected to spirit, which is Sophia and Geradamas in one. The soul and mind then create our avatar, which we can shape and form as we please when we are without our physicality. We have earlier discussed that the same phenomenon applies to Sabaoth and Zoe Sophia. Sabaoth is also Prince Enlil in Orion, but becomes the Archangel Michael. When he descends into the Kinoma as the second commander of the Mi'kmaq Defense Force and NEC forces, because Sabaoth / Prince Enlil has access to a lot of spirit in Orion. He exists as one, between quotation marks, being in Orion, who probably never leaves Orion in that emanation. And the real name of Orion is Arion. And here on Earth we have Ariyan with a Y. So here is a little distortion deliberately done. Instead, he splits himself, so better said, who probably never leaves Orion in that emanation. Instead, he splits himself into lower emanations who can access lower dimensions. When Sabaoth operates on Earth, he becomes Enlil's, between quotation marks, son, S-O-N, Ninurta. Pistis Sophia becomes Zoe in Orion, Isis as a creatrix in Gaia and Earth, and Eve as her spirit breath within humans. I hope the reader can see how these beings split themselves to travel into many dimensions. So in our case, we became individuated units of consciousness away from Orion. So what happens when we return where we came from? Or conversely, Pistis and Seth and ultimately Geradamas retrieve us. To visualize this, think about Geradamas, our highest manifested self in the pleroma, as a cloud, between brackets, luminary, in which we belong. I use the term between quotation marks cloud because that is what the archons use when they talk about the singularity, which we will discuss soon. First, we go back to Orion the way we are now, but much more aware because of Orion's much higher dimension and densities. In Earth, we used Enki's artificial soul, mind, and spirit body, between brackets, the sapiens body, which makes our conscious mind merely the mind of the matrix construct, and which is destroyed after each incarnation. We rarely use the divine mind intentionally in this realm because we are largely disconnected from it unless we philosophize, using our imagination and intention, wherewith we get insights and inspiration. That is the divine mind, between quotation marks, glued to spirit. Spirit is light and information, but it is not the thinking unit. The divine mind is the thinking unit. We can only reach it by turning inward and pondering things from within. According to the Gnostic texts, we will stay as creators in the eighth heaven for a long time. While the kinoma dissolves, because part of Orion is physical, it will also be consumed with time. And we return whence we came to the, between quotation marks, cloud, which ultimately is the pleroma human aeon, Geradamas. What will happen then? Will we just merge with Geradamas and all become one? I do not think so, at least not in the sense many people are concerned about. There is a reason I think we will still be individuated in the pleroma under the all-encompassing luminary who is Geradamas. Being human in the pleroma means we can travel about freely. Being of Geradamas light, I.E, being her in actuality, Also, we will be connected telepathically with each other, and all our common experiences and memories will be stored and shared within the, between quotation marks, cloud. Who is Gerardamas, who is the first human, who is also Barbello, the first emanated mother. Thus everything is kept and always known by source, the mother goddess herself. We as a soul group returning to the pleroma can use our overall shared experiences to create in the pleroma the ultimate spiritual creative playground. That is from the pleroma aspect, as we know by now. The pleroma's intention is to absorb the spirit from the archons and consume the physical universe we call the kinoma. So that is the consummation of the age. However, as we also know, the archons, being the aeons shadows, must imitate, replicate, and invert any plan the pleroma and or Orion might have. Therefore, let us now compare metaverse and the singularity. It is fascinating to see how it works. All right, how it is all inverted. With the above information in mind, how does that correspond to the singularity? To see the connection, the reader must realize the scope of the shadow world. The archons, between quotation marks, instinctively copy everything from Orion and the pleroma. So we are living indeed in a copied universe that becomes digitalized. And more often than not, the archons, are predictable when we understand their modus operandi. So this is so important that we start to see how they operate, what are what are the mechanics and dynamics the archons are playing with and through. So we need to understand whom they are so that we can understand what is happening, and also see long before the next step takes place, we see already the next step coming before the rest sees coming. Yeah. So it is of great importance to understand how archons think and interpret things and see things. It is the same principle when we learn about narcissism. We discover they are all pretty much the same, react the same, and think the same, and act the same, whether they are from China or America, Scandinavia, or the Middle East. Doesn't matter, it's all the same script. Knowledge will always protect us, and it becomes fairly easy to discover their plans, as above, so below. And knowledge gives us power also in seeing, and thus turning also the tables, not only in our lives, but also in the human soul group. The more of us are starting to see the mechanics and dynamics through which the archons are operating and working and interpreting things and seeing and understanding things, the more we get to understand this, the more of us do so, the more we are of great help to our fellow brothers and sisters in the human soul group who do not do so yet. So knowledge will always protect us, and it becomes very easy to discover their plans, as above, so below. So our mission is, as mentioned earlier, and here it comes, to condemn and consume the archons from our physical body. So our mission is, as mentioned earlier, to condemn and to consume the archons from our physical bodies. Zoe let all 7 chief archons add their DNA to the Homo sapiens genome so the human spirit could spread light through our bodies and, most importantly, through the archontic DNA. Why is this done? Because they hope that because of this construct, so to say, this solution, better said, or Sophia, Pistis Sophia, and Orion, and thus Geradamas also, and thus the Mother Goddess, hope to then undo the entire kinoma and have the pleroma become whole again, and then undo the so-called mistake, so to say, that Sophia made a long time ago by creating a creation without the permission of Geradamas. So this is what they have set up. Yes, so we also have archontic DNA in us to eventually consume this through the light that we have. We, lovely brothers and sisters, are the original light bearers. We are these light bearers. We are the light carriers. And this, if I read this, this reminds me of this end scene of the third Matrix movie where Neo and Agent Smith are in this end battle. But it's not about these persons. It is in actuality exactly what Wes Penre is describing here. The consummation of this archontic DNA in the human soul group, because Agent Smith represents in actuality also this archontic DNA. Neo represents the human soul group, and by sticking his hand into Agent Smith, he consumes this archontic DNA. And then eventually we see that Agent Smith completely lights up. And then you see all the Agent Smiths like, oh my gosh, what is going on here? Because they realize what is happening. And what is happening is that they realize in actuality that their existence stops and their world ceases to exist, which is the kinoma. So now, and this is what my spirit showed me. So if you hear this information, please hear it also with your own spirit and ask your own spirit to help you to get more clarification and examples for you so you can understand this consummation of the age process and this whole consummation process. So the consuming of darkness in light, by and through light. So again, I repeat it again because this is very important. Our mission is, as mentioned earlier, to condemn and consume the archons from our physical bodies. Zoe, Sophia led all 7 chief archons and their DNA to the Homo sapiens genome so the human spirit could spread light through our bodies, and most importantly, through the archontic DNA, so we could absorb their darkness. This unfortunately didn't work, since the shadow world instinctively counteracts any action taken by the spirit world or Orion. If we really boil it dry, we know that Pistis Sophia needs the spirit back she invested in the kinoma. It is not just for selfish reasons, but also because the spirit still in the kinoma, between brackets, the human soul group included, is draining both Pistis, Sophia, and the Pleroma from energy, weakening the spiritual realm. This is getting worse, since we humans have taken a lot of energy from the Pleroma, but just recycled it with the matrix system to benefit the cons and archons. So we are in actuality depleting the Pleroma, our home universe, so to say. Then we give this energy to the archons, and thus to the matrix construct. All right, therefore it is crucial that the kinoma, I.E, the entire solar system, is absorbed by spirit and returns to the Pleroma. Instead of us completing this mission, the archons gave us full amnesia, recycled us, and made us into narcissistic abuse victims. So now we start to get to see a picture why so many of us have to cope with narcissistic persons in our life. Yeah? Becoming more and more like the archontic abusers. We see around us a lot of abuse taking place. There is a huge rise of darkness and abuse and psychopathy in this world. It's all because of this. When I think about, between quotation marks, human narcissists, I tend to think full-fledged narcissists are not human at all, but sophisticated androids, completely made with technology when they are born. There is no consciousness in them. However, they gain consciousness throughout their lives by stealing it from us. Then when they die, the stolen consciousness goes directly to the archons. And maybe we get here the answer why the opposite party knows so much about us. And as a matter of fact, years ago, and I speak about around about 10 years ago, Spirit was already telling me this, that all that they know about humans is not because of themselves, but of the fact that they steal consciousness of humans and then have it integrated in themselves. And this is how they can understand us also. Taking into consideration that narcissists are all acting the same, I look at them as non-player characters. There is nothing human or humane in them, save the consciousness they steal from us. They are programmed to use that consciousness against us to gain more loosh for the archons and keep us under control. So this means that we need to be aware of our emotional state of beingness. And so we need to become masters over our emotional life. The more we can take a step back in a situation, the better. We can see if that emotion is really ours or is there as a reaction on something the situation is trying to have us triggered into, so that the archontics can have their food. Humans in general have learned to take orders from authority, and authority is directly connected to archons, and believe they have our best interest in mind, when they have everything but, because they don't have their best interest with us. Absolutely not. We listen to them even when logic goes out the window. Over the millennia, we have fought the archons' wars and established their empires by sacrificing our own lives, only to be recycled again, usually to the same area in which we died. We must understand the archon's problem is reversed from ours and that of the pleroma. The spirit realm wants the light back, and the kinoma wants light too. But they want to consume light with darkness so they can maintain their gloomy realm. Therefore, they must do the opposite. They are working just as hard to absorb light within darkness as the pleroma works on absorbing darkness with light. So they need to expand the kinoma, and they do this by invading Orion. The archons, being essentially non-spirited, cannot directly access the pleroma and can therefore not invade it, but they can invade Orion, which is semi-physical. However, they do not want all light absorbed into darkness, or they will be consumed. Similarly, they do not want to let too much light shine either, since that will consume them too. They see Orion as an enormous threat, since it is through Orion kinoma is supposed to be consumed, and with that the archons too. Therefore, in the singularity, where those who enter metaverse and merge with the, between quotation marks, cloud, will be the subordinate to the archons. And these chosen humans, the 3%, transmute into a hive mind. Each person will contain their individuality, but is also telepathically connected to and through the cloud, and from there to the archons. And then we are in their complete shared fantasy mindset. Yes, so then we are fantasizing not not our fantasies, but their fantasies. Yeah, reversing the concept that we humans are connected to the aeons. Thus, the rulers can easily manipulate us with their thoughts. And in actuality, this is already happening on great scale. Look at the politicians, I would say, and CEOs from all these big corporations. At least this is the plan. By that time, humans who invest their consciousness in the cloud will be fully developed cyborgs, potentially physically immortal, which imitates our spiritual immortality. In the physical world, the archons gain spirit by riding our avatars into the nanoverse-Orion. As my contact in Orion said, those in charge of the nano world are in charge of the universe. There we have the archontic consummation of the age, but then an inverted version, which means their archontic version. In the real consummation of the age, the pleroma via Orion and via us, the kinoma will be consumed, and in reverse. The archons via us will try to consume Orion, and by that slowly consuming the pleroma as well. That is the ultimate battle between shadow and light, which is also taking place in our bodies, or body, and thus in our mind too. Who will be the victor of all this? So we may ask ourselves how the archons can, between quotation marks, absorb Orion. How can they do so? By riding human avatars, thus by riding human spirit bodies. After all, humans are essentially light. So won't that enlighten Orion rather than diminish it? Well, it will diminish it because the archons are darkness, and they will have manipulated the humans they ride into becoming like them, which will create a gloomy Orion instead of a heaven that is completely lit up. As my Orion contact said, if Orion turns gloomy and more shadowy and under archontic command through Yaldabaoth and his captain, Marduk / Jesus / the false Christ, it will also heavily affect the pleroma. And that is everybody's problem, including ours. Orion will turn into an extended kinoma and return to the state it was before Pistis separated the 8th and the 7th heaven. Thus, from an archontic perspective, between quotation marks, everything goes back how it was. One could say the cloud, having the capacity of nearly 200 million 3-unit composites, which means soul, mind, spirit, body, and the spirit is for the archons as if it were an aeon dash humans, as a massive cloud, become the first human. And all the archons become the individuated, so-called Geradamas, which they, of course, cannot become, but that is how they think. That is how they see it. So they think in their mind that they then can become an individuation of Geradamas, which is, of course, an inverted version, an archontic version, on a mission to save the universe, dash, the archontic universe, which we are part of. That is the kinoma. Now the reader understands that both sides, the pleroma and the kinoma, fight both for survival. And this is also what we see play out in human soul group. Spirit can never die, but it can transform into something else. E.G, go back to blend with the cosmic ocean, and in an extreme, the pleroma might implode and return to the cosmic ocean. And source, the mother goddess. Would once more return to being one. So I am not suggesting this will happen, but according to the Gnostics, the pleroma gets gloomier too, relatively speaking, and this affects the overall creation in the spirit realm and in Orion by consuming the eighth heaven. Sorry, there was some interruption. By consuming the eighth heaven, archons and humans draw light from the pleroma, since the light in the eighth heaven is provided by the pleroma. All the stars are luminaries, projected from the aeons to illuminate Orion, Prince Enlil's heaven and future kingdom. So there is far more at stake with this whole singularity and metaverse than we human soul group do realize. And this is why I give you all this information, because this is quite important to know. I'll leave it for this. Yeah. 1 hour, okay. Because the next level is all about cosmic marriage, Israel and the Star of David. So I will quit this part 3, and this will be part 4, because it's of quite importance to read this to you with focus and concentration, so that you get the understanding of what is being written in this book. So the next time, that will be after the weekend, I will come back with the cosmic marriage, Israel and the Star of David, which will be part 4 of the inverted consummation of the age, and then that will be the last part, and then this chapter is being given to you better said, all the information that was in this chapter is then been given to you. And I would say again, ponder upon and meditate upon. Ask your own spirit for clarification so you get a deeper understanding of this information that has been given to you. My own conclusion is that we really need to ask far more questions about all these technologies that the archons are trying to lure us into, and also try to enforce us to use, such as artificial intelligence. Um, I think there are not many people who truly realize what is in actuality going on in this world and with this world, who do not realize what the singularity is, nor what the metaverse is, and what is happening to us, to this earth, to all life forms here on earth. Um, there are still too less of us humans realizing that everything that we do and participate in will have extreme consequences, not only for this planet, but also for this shadow world, so to say, Kinoma, the Orion universe, and the Pleroma itself, the universe we come from. And every life form that is living there. So there's much at stake here, and it's about time that we start to understand what this stake is. All right, thank you so much for tuning in through Facebook, Rumble, and YouTube. Thank you for listening along. I wish you all a great weekend filled with a lot of love, truth, wisdom, and also revelations coming from your own spirit. It is about time to work with your own spirit and to have that connection more and more strengthen it. Um, Also, I would say for the period that is coming, because life on earth can be, yeah, I would say the coming period can become very rough. Yeah. So here's a little piece of music. Um, Happiness. I see you next time.